Well, hello, my friends. Welcome here. Welcome back to Katie Church, which is such a funny thing for me to be calling this thing I'm doing every week. Part of why I'm calling this Katie Church. I'm so glad you guys are here. Hello, all six of you. Good to see you. Feel free to post in the chat at any point. Let me know who's here. Say hi. Send hugs and love. It's always good to know who's hanging out. Part of why I want to call this Katie Church is because there is a church aspect to this. This is a spiritual set of conversations. Thank you, Cindy. So do I. Oh my God, I'm so pretty. We're to Alex Rizzi. What's up, friend? Emily, hello. It's good to see you guys. So it's Allison Quinn. I can't believe it. It's all the people that matter. We're done. It's everyone's here. All the people, all 8, 9 of you. That's it. That's all we need. But more, come, more. You're also invited. So here's the deal. It's called Katie Church because don't we need some kind of spiritually place to go to talk about consciousness and awareness and evolving and being empowered and awake and alive in an integrated, holistic way that isn't the old, dense, icky, churchy way? So shouldn't I call it something irreverent like Katie Church to kind of comment on the problematic nature of church itself while also embodying an homage to same? Yes, I should is the answer to that question. All right, so good to see everyone. Doc Bill had a very difficult time finding this. Well, hopefully, Doc Bill, you know now this is where you find it. You always go to Katie Rubin's Biz Stuff. Just search in the search bar on Facebook for Katie Rubin's Biz Stuff. And this is where this will be happening each week. John Maletta, ladies and gentlemen, he's here. I know you were all waiting for him. He's here. Now we can start. John Maletta of the famous OMA, Pittsburgh, the Organization of Many Americans. Nope, doesn't stand for that. The Open Mouth Aptitude Quiz. Nope, doesn't stand for that. OMA Pittsburgh is an organization that I think the OMA, it represents is the first letter of 3 different rivers that meet in Pittsburgh. But I like to make up names for my acronyms. I like to find new words to fill in what they might be for. Good to see you guys. So we have a really fun and somewhat challenging topic for tonight. I want to talk about, what did we call this? Grief. There's a title somewhere. Feelings, grief, and the vast beyond. The vast beyond. What do feelings and grief have to do with all the stuff that those of us who are into the spiritual worlds and into the worlds beyond have to do with one another, right? There is a very common problem amongst spiritual folk, which is that spiritual people, we are people who are really good at opening the heart chakra and above. We love our lovely little heart chakra. We like to express our feelings in our throat. We like to see through the veils of time and space with our third eye. We like to know the divine and travel to the realms beyond through the crown. We don't, however, always love those icky, sticky, dense vibrations that you find down in chakras 1, 2, and 3. And if you're newish and don't know what chakras 1, 2, and 3 are, hi, Rachel. I just saw your name there. Good to see you. Just know that that's like solar plexus, low belly, like womb space, pelvic floor, and genital area. So 3, 2, and 1. When I refer to 3, 2, 1, that's what I'm talking about. From a human design perspective, what is often stated lately is that human beings actually elevated at a certain point from being from being 7-centered beings to being like 9 or 12 or 15 or something. So there are a lot of people in the consciousness realms talk about, we're not the old chakra system that I tend to refer to a lot is out of date now. We are many centered beings. And I agree with that. And that has been my experience. That does match my awareness energetically. When I'm in the Akashic Records, I do see that. However, I like to refer to the old chakra system, if you will, because it's a nice, simple way to break down the basics of what's going on in a body, mind, organism. So whenever I refer to the chakra system, please know that I am aware there's more to it than that. But understanding those basics of what's going on in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is by the way, you have a chakra above 7. So your crown chakra is at the top of the head. Goes like this. I can't make the shape work. It's like a funnel, okay? It's like a V. And then above that, you have what's known as the eighth chakra, which is about a foot above the top of your head. Some people would say higher up, depends on how you see things. The eighth chakra is the portal through which your soul descends into the body. So sometimes people will have a foggy or clogged eighth chakra. And if we clear it up inside of a session, it helps the soul really anchor into the 3D body. So just know if you're struggling with embodiment at all, you might want to have your healer or yourself look at what's going on with my eighth chakra. Is it cloudy up there? Is it foggy up there? Am I holding stuff from a past life up there? Do I have trauma from my childhood up there? Okay, so we are more than 7-centered beings, and I'm going to refer to those 7 centers because they're a convenient way to talk about the body, mind, organism. Now, what do feelings and grief have to do with all this wonderful stuff from chakra 5 and up? What do feelings and grief have to do with talking to the star beings, channeling archangels, the Merkaba star, activating your light body, being friends with the Pleiadians and the Sirians, if these words mean anything about that? What does it have to do with the Akashic Records? It's an incredibly important conversation that we have as people who are transcending time and space a lot and doing high vibrational woo-woo stuff. Is we need to understand, even more so than the average human being, how to work with our feelings, how to work with our human emotions and our grief in particular. I will start this conversation by giving an example that I hope is a useful one, of what happens when we don't do this and we become deeply spiritually activated. Anybody, so if you're in any of my healing classes, you've probably heard me ranting on about this recently, but anybody ever heard of any spiritual system run by men ever? Ever noticed like a guy getting real spiritually elevated, like real awake in the spiritual realm and running an organization of a lot of people following said guy, human man, binary male? We're talking in generalities here, but it's to make a point. A lot of times in history, nobody here, because we're all healthy and awake here, but in history, a lot of human males who have run spiritual organizations have wound up sleeping with all their students or using sexual power or power to have power over their students. If they don't sleep with their students, it turns into something about, like, if you think about the story of the Bhagwan, okay, if we look at Wild Wild Country, if you haven't watched that docuseries, it's a great one to go to. Please understand, I'm not saying all men are terrible. I love me some men. I hang out with men. I love men. I date the men. Men are great. But my point being, one place that men get caught, there are plenty of places women get caught, but I'm just speaking right now about men and non-binary folks and transgender folks. Men can often get caught on the spiritual path in the frequency of their sexuality. So when someone like the Bhagwan is doing this crazy high vibrational work that he's doing, working in really high realms of consciousness and holding space, by the way, for a lot of people under him, like a lot of students, a lot of teachers giving darshan or whatever the hell they called it in their system. If the Bhagwan does not deal with his emotional stuff around sex, money, power, status, control, all the ego points that are easy to fall into as human mammals, like we all do, when the Bhagwan does not integrate his emotional process and learn how to deal with his feelings effectively, when that much light starts to stream through your system and you gain that much awareness about consciousness and the nature of reality, it becomes really difficult to stay grounded and to integrate your spiritual light practice down into your body. Now, I've been very blessed with some spiritual teachers, one in particular who's a dear friend of mine and a healer, a healing practitioner, who helped me really understand at a certain point in my journey how important the feelings were, the emotions were in the spiritual body. I had the experience that many people on spiritual paths have, which is that I had some natural abilities. So I go to a healing school, my first of 3, and I'm able to do stuff that other people in my class maybe weren't able to do as quickly. I could see through time and space. I could see what was happening inside people's beings. I could hear the divine talking. I could transmit light really easily. Side note, I was also at the same time, I'm gonna go on a limb and say way more traumatized than most people in that school. Way more trauma I was carrying. So, what is the relationship between trauma and being able to see more and do more in the spiritual realm? They are directly connected. Trauma, what happens when one is traumatized at a very young age, as I very much was, as an infant, in the womb, as a 1, 2, and 3-year-old, I went through some dark, dark shit very, very young. Okay. When one has trauma at those stages of development, you have to understand that trauma breaks the system open of a baby human mammal. Human beings are spiritual beings attempting to walk around with a nervous system and a meat suit on top of it. Okay. So when trauma occurs before the system is done developing, the system has a big old break in it. And those breaks break through not only the body and the heart of the human, but they break through into the next realms of consciousness. So if you're traumatized as a real young baby, you're probably going to get access to different layers of consciousness pretty damn quick. And if you happen to be someone with my astrology and my life purpose, you're going to also have some natural abilities to move energies, to communicate, to believe in stuff, whatever. I'm Aquarius with Pisces sun and Sag rising. If that means anything to you, then you know what I'm saying. This was all by design and it was all meant to happen. And so it's all good. That doesn't mean it's an easy ride when you're a trauma survivor, right? It's not an easy ride, but it is, I do believe, all designed to be exactly what it was always going to be. Like it all happened because it needed to happen. And it happened in the way it needed to happen because it needed to happen that way for me to be who I am today and do this thing right now with you. So when you're traumatized super young, it breaks the heart and the body mind organism open so that the being that is traumatized has access to realms of consciousness that an untraumatized kid, body, person, whoever, is not going to have. So that's why so often when you meet psychics and healers and wizards that are like on a street corner or in a storefront or wherever, that they can feel really ungrounded and really a little cuckoo pants and really a little not well. There's the trope of the wounded healer is a real trope because it's an archetype. It's a real thing. When we are deeply wounded, we gain access to the realms beyond because the wound cuts through layers of consciousness that other people don't have cut through. Okay. So to that end, it is my point of view, okay, this personal healer, me, my point of view, I'm just a human lady, that if we're working in the realms beyond, the psychic realms, the more refined realms of the auric field, the chakras beyond 8, if we're working in high vibrational frequencies of light, if we're dealing with angels and channeling and being a medium and energy work and all of that, we have an even higher responsibility to our clients and to our students to really work hard on chakras 3, 2, and 1. I should say 4, 3, 2, and 1, the heart down. And it is not sexy, guys. It is not fun. It is not cute. And it is not easy to market on Instagram. That's why all the spiritual shit you see marketed is always about fucking glitter and fairies and elves, because that's the shit that's easy to sell. You know, buy my cute trinket that I'm selling. It's like a necklace with a crystal in it. And you can buy it on my website and then come to my class and we're going to light your light body. Yeah, we are. And that's going to happen. But I got news for you. When you start activating your light body, everything that is already buried in chakras 1, 2, 3, and 4, those denser, lower vibrational chakras, all your trauma is going to get hit by that light. It's going to get activated by that light. So if you're the Bhagwan or other spiritual leaders, and I shouldn't just talk about male spiritual leaders, it's just that it's happened a lot in human history with male spiritual leaders, and you're not doing your 3, 2, 1 work, your third chakra, second chakra, first chakra work, and you're bringing all that light through, that light is poking at you, as one of my favorite comedians from the 90s, whose name is not in my head right now, Paula Poundstone, would have said. 90s reference. You're welcome. That light is poking at your shit and activating it. So what happens when the light activates your stuff in chakras 3, 2, 1 that you have not dealt with is you begin to act out from your trauma. So let's say you're a man and you become a spiritual leader because you love the way the light heals and you had such a mean mom and she was so mean to you that like you don't even know the experience of love until you meet God. But because you're so traumatized, you have a gift of holding the light of God and you could pull it into your body and you're like, oh my God, I'm falling in love with God. I'm going to be a spiritual teacher because this is my favorite feeling in the world. What else would I want to do? Cut to 10 years later, you've been doing all this light work. You're a spiritual leader now and you're like suddenly like real mad at women. And you're like, well, I can't admit how mad I am at women because I'm this highbrow spiritual teacher. So I can't even hear for myself that I might have issues with such a base, simple thing as women. I should be over that by now, says the ego mind. So then the impulse or the inclination of the spiritual leader at that point is to go, I don't have any problems, and just shove all that third, second, and first chakra trauma further down into the recesses of the unconscious body, mind, organism. Where what happens for all of us, not just spiritual leaders that happen to be males, what happens for all of us, you guys, who when we shove our stuff down, is that stuff, your unconscious trauma, your unprocessed stuff, it starts to drive the bus of you from behind the scenes, from the unconscious realms. And when your stuff is driving the bus of you from the unconscious realms, that's when you start doing shit like buying 55 Rolls Royces, like the Bhagwan did, and having your second in command try to poison all the homeless people in your spiritual camp because you can't afford to have them there. And you're starting to shoot heroin and do all kinds of crazy shit. This is what the Bhagwan did because you haven't dealt with your shit and your shit is getting lit up by the bright light of consciousness or the divine or whatever you like to call it. So there was a certain point in my journey where, I mean, and I just want to be really transparent with you guys, myself, speaking from as someone with trauma, okay, there was a point, there were many years where because I had these abilities to connect with the divine and transmit light for people, and I had a lot of empathy for people's pain. So I was sort of like a natural healer. I could just do it pretty well. I was operating on, it was almost like I was surviving on divine light alone. Okay. I wasn't great at relationships. I didn't have a lot of connections with people. I was like floating on top of the earth. So I know of what I speak on this topic because I've lived it. There came a point where there was enough healing that had happened in certain layers of my being that needed to happen first. Like we had to hit the heavy, heavy trauma healing first, that the divine started to say to me, okay, babe, it's time we're going to look at your emotional body now. And we're really going to go in there and it's going to get for real. And you're going to have a bunch of years in a row of a lot of emotional processing now. Whereas the years before was a lot of energetic processing. So like I'd have a huge transmission of light hit my heart and I'd get real tired and real wiped out, or I'd get real amped up and energized. And I'd sometimes have to be like, I get real sensitive and I couldn't go out in the world much. And I'd lay down for like a couple days to recover, like really serious shit I had to heal. And then when I got through the heaviness, the worst of it, which took quite some time. By the way, if you're on a healing path and you're doing it with spiritual healing work, good for you. And please remember, it always takes a lot longer than your ego mind wants it to. And boy, can I say that from personal experience. Okay. It takes so much longer than we want it to get through the worst of it. But I'm telling you, if you've got big, dark, heavy shit, you will get through it if you stay on the path. I did, and there's no difference between me and you. I'm just a human being who's stubborn and unwilling to give up on this path. Okay. And you could be just that stubborn too. Do it. Commit to the light healing you and it fucking will. Okay. All right. So, but there came a point where the divine said, okay, now you got it. Now it's feelings time, honey. And I went, ugh, really? I thought we were like, not going to do that this lifetime. I was deluded and arrogant and, to be fair, ignorant. I didn't understand. Why should I have to go through the emotional layers and the density of understanding my relational dynamics with humans? After all, humans were the ones that hurt me so bad when I was so little. So why would I want to go back and deal with them anyway? I was pretty happy living on my hill alone, doing my woo-woo shit from my house, not seeing a lot of people, staying with God. Me and God are real tight. We're tight. You know why? Because God is just love. And love doesn't have an argument with you about the washing machine or about who's going to do the dishes. So it's easy to hang out with the divine for someone who is a spiritual person, like all of you that are here today. So during that period of time when things got really real on the emotional level. Oh my God, I want to sneeze. I have a sneeze that's right here, but it won't happen, you guys. Ah. I started to have a different kind of process during that time where every time I would go into the records and bring light into my own body, then either later that night or the next day or 2 days later, I would always have a big emotional release after the energy work. And I started to see that pattern and started to realize, okay, I started to understand how the light works with the 3D emotional body. And like I said, I was lucky to be working with a healer friend of mine who taught me the following thing, which is the entire point of what I want to talk about today. He said, and I've said this to many of you who are here today, emotions are the midway point between the spirit and the body. So what the hell does that mean? I sat with that for a lot of years. Emotions are the midway point between the spirit and the body. Another way to think of that is the heart chakra, the heart center here in the center of the chest. It's so weird. The mirror is backwards, so I keep doing gestures, but they're the opposite of what I want them to be. When the light comes through the portal of the heart, which is how it works, the light, of course, can travel through everything and it comes in however it wants and needs to, and you're given however your system needs it to come in. And specifically, the heart is designed to be the portal of the light. When it comes through the heart, it necessarily, when you are connected to your feelings, okay, so the light's healing your heart, your feelings, your emotions can happen in a lot of places in your body, mind, organism. But the more light you bring in through your heart, the more it becomes impossible to avoid your feelings. And so when my healer was teaching me that emotions are the midway point between the spirit and the body, I realized, okay, I can no longer afford to bypass my emotions, even with this divine light. You've heard the saying, the only way out is through. Okay. That's how the human body, mind, organism was designed for healing to occur and connection to occur and spiritual ascension to occur through the vehicle of the emotional body. So when you bypass your emotions, thinking like, that's too uncomfortable, I don't want to feel that, I'll just do spiritual stuff, or that's too uncomfortable, I don't want to feel that, I'll just go shopping, or that's too uncomfortable, I don't want to feel that, I'll put on a happy face and always seem good all the time, or that's too uncomfortable, I don't want to feel that, I'll achieve more stuff so that I don't have to feel that I'm sad or scared or insecure. What you're doing is actually limiting your ability to connect with the divine, and you're limiting the degree to which your container can become a conscious vehicle. Okay, so what do I mean by a conscious vehicle? I mean, you're okay, when you start doing divine light healing work or getting on a spiritual path, doing spiritual practices, when you start integrating your emotional work, what you can do as a wizard person is vastly increased. It's increased, I would say, exponentially, depending on the degree in relationship to I'm doing bad math. The degree to which you do your emotional work vastly increases the degree to which your spiritual capacities increase. Now, that seems counterintuitive when you're doing spiritual healing work or when you're in a spiritual process. You want to just zone out and bliss out in the light. And you're like, the last thing I want to do is be sad about how my dad treated me when I was 5. But the way it works is when you do your emotional work, you soften the parts of you that are hardened into walls, defenses, guarding, habits of unconsciousness, narcotization, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, food, sex, money, power, whatever it's through. You soften the walls of defenses inside your emotional body, and all of a sudden you become a stronger and simultaneously more supple, resonating chamber for conscious awareness. You can know this much about conscious awareness when you are not dealing with your emotions. You can know everything about the infinite beyond in every direction once you start integrating your emotional work into your spiritual path. It is the doorway to so much more information than what you can gain access to spiritually without walking through the doorway of your emotions. Now, I have seen, you guys, many, many spiritual healers, teachers, leaders in many traditions and spaces and places who follow many leaders and churches and places and all kinds of traditions. Try to teach people that they need to stay positive and they need to stay in the light and they need to always be positive and in the light. This is the opposite of what I have come to understand is true. I have been blessed with the whole time people were telling me that, I kept being like, if that's the case, then the entire human organism has been designed incorrectly. Are we all comfortable with the idea that the way your body mind organism was built by consciousness itself, or or let's say by fucking Darwinism or evolution over time, you think this machine really has no wisdom built into it? You think it's all fucked up? If we are to believe that quote unquote negative emotions or heavy energies are to be avoided at all costs, then we are saying necessarily that the way the machine works is wrong. That has not been my personal experience. My personal experience is more in line with something this perfected master and my one of my central spiritual teachers, his name was Sidi Al Jamal, on the Sufi path, where I went to my first healing school. Something he taught, he said, "You're supposed to have your emotions, beloveds," he would say, "but you don't stop with them." What people are selling on Instagram right now that they call spirituality, and by the way, I'm generalizing when when I shit on Instagram. I'm trying to make a point about the way spirituality is like marketed as this like cute, sexy little skirt you can buy. It's been commodified and marketed and turned into like a weekend workshop solution to all your life fucking problems. That's just not how healing works. It takes time and dedication and diligence, and it happens over a long period of time with a lot of commitment and focus and a lot of grounding into chakras 3, 2, and 1. I can tell you from personal experience with the hundreds of clients I've worked with and with myself and with all my teachers who've taught me that. He said, Sidi Al-Jamal, perfected master from Jerusalem, who would come to this tiny mosque in Napa, California, where I went to the Sufi healing school that used to be known as the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism. UHSH. Is that what it is? UHS Healing and UH, you get it. Acronyms, letters. He said, beloveds, you have to be with your feelings, but don't stop with your feelings. So what does that mean? It means when you have grief, which we're going to talk about grief in a minute here, because sometimes I feel like all I ever want to say to my students and my clients as a healer is all you need to do is be with your grief. Just find your grief in your body and be with it forever. I'll help you by bringing a bunch of light through that makes the grief come up and that makes it move through you faster. And I'll hold space and remind you that your grief is not going to kill you. And I'll be here to, transmit light that makes it easier for you to sit with that grief and that helps blow it out of your body faster. But you may not even need that. Maybe you just need a journal and a pen. But if we could all just be with our grief and really stay with it until it was done processing through us, we would have no problems on this planet. But we are so critical and judgmental and impatient with our grief, and we don't know what to do with it as a culture, that we want to bypass it in 8,000 different ways, and we are all masters of avoiding it and encouraging one another to avoid it with what has been termed in our culture now toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is this good vibes only bullshit. Good vibes only, really? That's how you stay real fucking sick. That's how you become the Bhagwan who was talking with God all day, transmitting the light of God and shooting heroin, needing 55 Rolls Royces to feel whole inside of himself. And his second in command is poisoning homeless people on the street. What's going on, buddy? That's called he didn't integrate. He didn't do his emotional work, or he missed something on the path, because that's not very integrated behavior. Okay, so what does feel your feelings but don't stop with it mean? What CD meant, and he talked about this at great length in his many books that he wrote, that he was an incredibly prolific teacher and writer of spiritual teachings, is that he would say, when you're angry, feel your anger and let the light hit you in the anger, and find out that under the anger is sadness. And then feel that sadness and let the light hit you and hold you in that sadness, and find out that as that sadness moves through, right behind that sadness is you. The seat of the self is found through the awakening process that occurs when we grieve. Grief work is kind of like the whole jam. If you're looking for authenticity, if you're looking to know yourself, if you're looking to not have to like understand what is intuition, what is spiritual guidance, which voice do I listen to inside myself? How do I know what's true for me? How do I which feelings do I share? Which feelings do I contain within myself? What do I do with this human body mind organism? The way to find out is to do your grief work and find out that just below it, just behind all that pain and suffering, is you, the authentic, true you, who pre-injury. Okay, the seat of the self is down in what the Hawaiians call the unahapili, which is down here in the low belly. And the Tai Chi folks call it the dantian. It's the where your center of gravity is, in the low belly of your body. Down in there, that's where the psychologists call it the inner child. That's where you is. Down and in. Down and in. You is not up and out. You is down and in. That's grammar. That was me using grammar just there. So now, to be technical and correct, you're not just that which is down and in. Okay. You are bigger than that which is down in your second chakra. You are the expansive light body that gets activated when you work with your Merkaba star or do whatever high vibrational shit you're doing. But I promise you that if you stay just with all these energies that are expanded and out and big and light, and your fucking, ascended archangels and your ascended master mentors, if you're out in the energy of Kuan Yin all day and you're disconnected from the Unahapili or the low belly or the Dantian or the inner child, you're gonna get a little fucking cuckoo pants. And you're going to be a little ungrounded and unintegrated. And at the very least, the effect that has is it messes up your relationships with people. You become unreliable. You can never show up to anything. You become emotionally unavailable to people. So we are the limitations of our emotions, and we're not. And what CD meant was, thank you, Daria. Daria said, I look beautiful cocoa pants. I think she means cuckoo pants. Maybe that's how you spell cuckoo. I would have 2 O's, but I am a writer and an editor, so I get a little anal about my spellings. But I am a cuckoo pants. You're right. And thank you. I feel really pretty today. I did my hair. Okay. Anyway, focusing. The point being, CD, what he meant was, you go into the feelings, you let the light hit the feelings, transmute them so they can leave your body, process through, and show you who you are. No, you are not your sad sack, sad self who has all the grief from your childhood. That sadness is not you. You are the seat of consciousness. You are the realm of consciousness in form. I'm in the form we call Katie Rubin, with this hair and this background and these hands. That's the form my consciousness is taking. So I am much bigger than my sadness. But in order to know intimately and to feel connected personally to what Katie Rubin actually is, who the essence of Katie Rubin is, not the personality, not the mind, not the ego, not the emotions, but the essence of Katie Rubin, I have to travel through the portal of my emotions to find the emotionless seat of self. The emotionless seat of self lives after your emotions. So there is no way around having the emotions, but don't stop and live in them forever and identify with them. You are not your emotions. You are that which is having emotions. Okay. So we don't get to bypass them and you don't identify with them. You have them. They come up and out like a geyser, okay? Like a waterfall, like clouds, whatever metaphor you like. They come up, they move through, you move forward. And the last thing I want to say before I take a couple questions, if anybody has any today, is that um, we don't have we don't get to control the speed at which our emotions happen all the time, and we don't get to decide with our big powerful computer brains that they should be done before they're fucking done. They're done when they're done. We are servants to this body mind organism. You've got to treat this thing like the fucking temple that it is. It's a temple for your spirit. It whole You are the light of God. God is emanating as you. You are just like molecules in time space, showing up in a 3D form. This is all illusion. The matrix is real. Okay? Consciousness, light is light is light. Everything is energy. So if the energy of consciousness is flowing through this body mind organism, this thing I call the temple of my body, it's my job to sweep the temple. And part of sweeping the temple and keeping the temple healthy is emoting. They call it emotions, energy in motion. Emotions, energy in motion. Your emotions should be moving. When they get stagnant or stuck, that's when you have real problems in your life. So the Bhagwan, I would argue, was not processing or moving those emotions. They were stuck somewhere. And so he was acting unconsciously from the stuck emotional energy that he wasn't processing. And again, that was not to shit on men, but that's to say that oftentimes when human men get on a spiritual path, a piece that is very difficult to navigate is their sexual energy. You guys, I'm so obsessed with the hair. I can't, it's my OCD is coming up. I'm letting it go. Sexual energy is a very powerful energy to learn how to work with and to point in a healthy direction. It is one of the trickier things all humans have to deal with, certainly not just men. But because the way the hormones work in the human male body, it's just true that when the light starts moving through a male body, the sexual energy gets activated. The kundalini starts to rise. So men need coaching with other spiritual men who have learned how to appropriately funnel, process, and direct their sexual energy. And if you go into a spiritual school, you guys, or a system of teaching where they do not help you understand how to work with your sexuality, then you need to find somebody who will. And that's true for women as well. Believe me, I am someone, I will totally be transparent and share with you. I have had to have so much teaching on, my God, the role and purpose of sexual energy, because I can be just as dominating and lustful and give me what I want as any old dude walking down the street. And I'm a powerhouse, so I know how to get what I want and throw it over the side of the ship if I feel like it. And for a long time, I believed, like, what's the big deal? We're all adults here. We can do what we want. Everybody's consenting. What's the problem? Well, the problem was I stayed on a spiritual path. Now, I am not a moralist. I'm not actually someone who's like, you should do this and you shouldn't do that. That is not how I operate personally. My point of view is this. As you continue to, if you're going to be on a spiritual path, what starts to happen is the body mind organism, your heart, your mind, your body, they start to resonate at higher and higher frequencies of light, such that it starts to really matter to the body mind temple what you do with your sexual energy. It's not that you're bad and wrong if you do all kinds of shit all over the place with your sexual energy. It's just that when you do that, things start to get complicated inside the temple. When two sexual bodies come together, okay, the DNA strands. Okay, let's talk about this briefly. I said I was going to stop and take questions, but we'll get there in just a second. Yes, Emily, macho culture, exactly. You have running through the center of your body, okay? The column of light through the middle of you, through your midline. You have, let me see if I can show you, like just through here, up, through, and down to the center of the earth, through that chakra system. You have a DNA double helix of divine light that is your sacred spiritual DNA matrix. It's your double helix. When you activate your light body, what starts to happen is the double helix of your DNA strand of your spiritual body starts to merge with the big picture double helix of the spirit itself. How do I know this? It's because my record keepers show it to me all the time in sessions with clients. They show me the double helix merging back into the great double helix, the double helix of the all that is, the double helix of consciousness. Okay. So and when you have sex with a person, when you have a human body and you have sex with a person, your double helix, your DNA strand, your spiritual DNA double helix strand that is the specificity of you, like the literal molecules of your soul, the energy bytes of your soul, merge with the molecules and energy bytes of somebody else's soul. Whoever's got their P in your V is merging with your freaking double helix, or whoever's got their B in your V, or your V in your V, or your P in your I, wherever you put, whatever you put, wherever. When you do that shit, the double helixes start to merge. So now when you're trying to merge your double helix into the double helix of the vast oneness of the all that is, you got John Smith in there with you. So I hope John Smith is keeping his house clean. Because if not, when you try to do your spiritual work and merge the double helix of you into the vast double helix of the all that is, now you're pulling him along in your journey. That's why, I had a teacher once say, probably the most important decision human beings make in their entire lives is who to marry. Like if you're going to marry a person, and some people aren't here for marriage, it's not what everybody's jam is. But if you're going to partner up with someone and do the marriage thing and get a ring and sign the paper and say the vows, when you say fucking vows and then you bring kids into the fucking planet, it's probably the most important decision you make is who you choose, not to make everybody feel pressured. But it's a really important decision because you're going to be doing your spiritual life for your entire life. I mean, if you're actually, if you're into spiritual shit, you're going to be dissolving more and more aspects of the ego into the oneness for your whole time here, and then reintegrating and finding out who you are as a separate individuated being. There's a lot to the spiritual path, you guys, when you stay on it for long enough. It takes a lifetime. It's what we're up to. So whoever's with you on that ride really matters, because all their shit is going to get pulled into your field. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be choosy as fuck, please, about whose double helix you want merging with your double helix while you try to merge into the vast helix of the all that is. Because it's not a small thing to disentangle somebody's energy out of your field, if you haven't noticed. Y'all have dated humans. I'm sure you've noticed that when you break up, boy, does it take time to disentangle the energies, doesn't it? It takes time to pull those hearts apart. It's because literally 2 DNA strands, so 4 DNA strands have become 2. That's what happens through sex, whether you want it to or not. And when people try to do this thing where they're like, I'm having sex, but we're keeping it distant, that's not a thing. Your hearts are merging. You could keep it sort of distant for a while, particularly if you're not doing your emotional work or your spiritual work. But if you're someone who's here tonight, you're doing your emotional work and your spiritual work, so it's not going to work for you to just be like, we're just keeping it light. You're not a light person. If you're doing your spiritual work and your emotional work, you're not. You can't be. You're not supposed to be. When you think of it this way, let's go back to the metaphor of keeping the temple clean. If I sweep the temple out, my body's a temple, and I sweep it out by bringing a lot of light in and clearing all my trauma and my hate at my mom and my rage at America and my fear of whatever monsters, financial ruin, whatever your fears might be, intimacy, right? Being seen, being heard, succeeding, failing. If I clean all that shit out and I get pretty lined up, I'm going to be pretty choosy about who comes into that temple now. Because if you come in with all your dirt on your shoes, you better believe I'm going to ask you to leave those shoes outside, please. I just swept in here. I just spent 25 years sweeping the fucking temple. You think you can just hang out? No. This is why in the parable of Jesus flipping over the tables. And I'm not a religious lady, but that's a whole other topic. Oh, I'm excited. Next week, I think we're going to talk about what is the role, what were the religions for, you guys? Why did these prophets come in different parts of the planet and teach these beautiful teachings? And what the fuck happened? Why is religion so fucked up? Let's talk about it next time. I have a lot to say because there are beautiful, mystical, true teachings at the heart and soul of every single religious path out there. It's just that the teachings get co-opted by humans who want power and control over other humans. And so then they twist stuff and then they fucking do things that are all fucked up. And so when people have trauma from religion, it's not the actual teachings of consciousness or of mysticism that they have trauma with. They have trauma with the humans who misguidedly gave them misinformation about what the religion was actually trying to teach. And a lot of those books got a little fucking twisted and a little backwards. So my point being, the hell was I talking about? Oh yeah, Jesus, right? He was a spiritual teacher. Sonia says, I call religion God's target marketing. God's target marketing. I don't get it, but I think it's funny. I like the rhythm of the joke, Sonia. I don't get it yet. Help me understand. Do you mean Target the store? Or do you mean target marketing? Like we're going to market to you, people in the area of Jerusalem with this kind of, you tell me what you mean. But I love it. I love that you said it. So, right. So Jesus, being an awesome mystical spiritual teacher like he was, and a very integrated dude, integrated meaning he did his emotional work too. He was like a awake human. He was one of the few that have come to this planet. He went into the temple one day and threw all the tables over because everybody in there was just fucking around in the temple. They were like selling shit and fucking each other and drinking alcohol and whatever. It's not bad that selling things and drinking alcohol and fucking people, but it's why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And what energies are you bringing into the temple? That's why he was so mad in that story, is he was like, you don't understand. This is God's house. You're just going to bring your dirty shoes into God's house? That's weird. Nothing wrong with dirty shoes. Just leave them outside and wear them when you're on the fucking dirt, you know? Okay, so feelings are the midway point between the spirit and the body. We don't get to bypass our feelings, and we must endeavor to wrestle with and work through the grief of our pasts. Grief, nothing makes a heart more supple and receptive to the divine light than working with your grief. Nothing. And if you're out there thinking you don't have any grief, I promise you, if you had a childhood, you have some grief. If you've ever had a relationship that ended badly or that ended at all, you have some grief. So find the doorway of your grief and let it be that which makes supple your heart so that you become more receptive to the light. If you're looking to deepen your spiritual practice, if that's not what you're up to, please don't listen to me talk. Go do other shit. There's a lot of people selling a lot of things on Instagram. I'm just some lady. So I'd love to take any questions. I may open the records of consciousness in a second if I feel the need to with your questions. But does anybody have any thoughts, feelings? Please type them in the comment section now. Any questions at all on any of the things I've been talking about today? Grief, feelings, and their relationship to the spiritual realm, their relationship to consciousness, their relationship to the vast beyond. No question is stupid. No question is too personal. No question is too specific. And I'm scrolling back through what people have said to see. I thought, just saw the first Instagram post. Yes, people get, is there a bottom to grief? Such a good question. Let me sit with that for a moment to see how they would respond to that. So yes and no. Okay, so I'm going to actively ask now. I'm just going to close my eyes for a second. I'm going to let my channel open at the back of my neck. I'm just expanding my energy field, grounding a little bit. At the same time. And I'd like to drop into the Akashic Records of Consciousness now, which is something I've been doing for a few weeks. And it's just been really, really cool. And I'm just asking the record keepers to show me when I'm there. Okay. Hmm. Okay, so is there a bottom to grief? Yes and no. Yes, there is a bottom to the acute grief that continues to come up and come up and come up inside of dynamics with people you have that end up not working or that become when the dynamics are difficult or charged with people. You can get to a place where the heat and the charged grief that always seems to just get triggered or activated in relational dynamics is 90% dissipated to where you are sitting with, as we talked about at the beginning, the true authentic seat of the self, which we can find, frankly, as a human organism only through processing through all the grief we possibly can. Now, that being said, the human organism is not meant to be completely free of grief. So, what I get with you, my love, who asked the question is what you're actually asking is this particular very difficult, very heavy flavor of grief that keeps showing up. Will there be a bottom to this? And perhaps you're also asking in an abstract way, of course, as well. But yes and no. So, no, in that, I'll put it this way. You may get through the heaviest weight of the trauma of your childhood and your sexual abuse and your whatever you survived, right? I'm just making things up to make a point. Um, Such that it doesn't own you anymore and it doesn't automatically come up in reaction to things that occur in your current life. But you might then 2 hours later see a Hallmark commercial and be sobbing at the with grief. But there is a thing that happens with grief where it turns into love. Uh, it's like it it's like when I cry a lot now, there is a kind of loving bowing to the divine where I'm saying, "My God, the beauty of being able to cry into the seat of myself." I mean, the beauty of loss. I know that may sound hard to believe, but at a certain point, cracking the heart open through the grief process becomes delicious. It feels so nourishing and good to be with grief at this point that I welcome it. I like roll around in it. And they're showing me as I say this, it's going to be even more like that the more I travel forward on my path, and it's going to be more like that for all of us. So there is a bottom to the density of the particular grief you're speaking of, and there will always be a terrible, horrible pain that is also simultaneously, paradoxically beautiful and glorious to the very nature of being alive in a human body. Think of it this way. It's stunningly beautiful too if you contemplate a flower. They said like Jesus one day, like his whole sermon was he held a flower up and just stared at it. And everybody was just staring at this flower, like, what are we supposed to get from this? And he's staring at the flower. And like 8 hours later, a single tear drops down his face because the beauty of the flower. I mean, look at a flower. Nature fucking made that. It's a little green stalk with the beauty pop at the top. What the fuck? Why? Why does it exist? Because consciousness can create beauty. It just can. So it just does. Ugh. And that, when your heart is broken open through your grief work, becomes achingly beautiful. And there's grief in that. There's the grief of like, oh my God, sometimes there isn't beauty. Sometimes there's horror and death and murder. And because those polarities exist, you will always have grief. When and if the human race elevates its consciousness to become a more conscious vehicle, like some of the star beings have, they don't really experience grief the way we do. Angels don't experience grief because they're fully surrendered and bowed to the light of God. But we have polarity. We have emotions. We have density. We have beauty and not beauty. And whenever that tension exists, you're going to have grief. But grief can become more and more achingly beautiful. I hope that helps and is useful. Okay. came in late. Do we carry over? Here's another question. Do we carry over emotions that we didn't clear process from past lives? Absolutely, 100%, a million percent. Yes, Rhonda. Thank you for that question. A million percent. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. So much. Yes. I had a client once who, I don't know if she's here tonight. I won't spill any beans I shouldn't spill. My pleasure, Ray. I hope that's helpful. We were doing a session once and she was saying to me, I get angry and I hold grudges and I don't know how to stop holding these grudges. And I went into her space and we saw there was a lifetime where she was a deer, which I've actually never seen that before, a person that was an animal. And there's a lot to say about that, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, she was a deer and she got shot by this hunter. And as the bullet was crossing this river and coming toward her body, all this hate and rage lodged into her heart. She was like, fuck you, hunter, for killing me. I'm an innocent function of nature. Why you got to murder me? That's ridiculous. And I'm dead. And then she was pissed at that hunter. And we cleared the energy of that and no more grudges. And she was definitely not a deer in this lifetime. That was from before. Now, that's just a silly example to make a point. But a million percent, yes, we do carry stuff from past lives, which is a good. Now, this brings another great question. Rhonda's question brings up another tangential question or idea that I do want to say, which is that people get really hung up a lot of times on, they want to know about their past lives. They want to know, was I a this? Was I a that? Who did I kill? What did I do? Did I marry my cousin today? Is my brother my husband? Was my husband my son? Like, what's the narrative? It can be really fun. It totally can. And I don't mean to be a killjoy, to look at what happened in past lives in terms of a narrative. But what most people do, my pleasure. I love you. Thank you for the question. What most people do when you give them a narrative about their past lives is they latch on to that narrative and make it really significant and make it mean something about their present lives. From my point of view, really the most relevant stuff about understanding a past life is, does understanding what happened in the past life liberate you more, align you with the light more, surrender you more deeply, help you know yourself more, help you live your purpose in this lifetime more? Does knowing the narrative of your past life help you now? Cool. And I ask every time, is this useful? And they'll be like, nah. And when it's not useful, they go, just clear the energy of it. So if you've got heavy emotional stuff from past lives, the point is to clear that, process it, release it, move it through your system by having your emotions, but not stopping with them, usually inside of a healing process with a healer like this bitch, KatieRubin.com, when you're ready. Have those feelings, process through them, and be free of it so that your past life stuck emotions don't have to limit you now. And so they don't have to drive you unconsciously now. But the narrative about your past life, which you have all had many of, it's not so relevant unless it's relevant. And for my money, I like to ask each time, do they need to know, will knowing about this past life help them now? And if I get a yes, then I tell them all the things that I'm shown. But if I get a no, then my job is to heal the stuck energy from the emotions from the past life. You get the point? Daria Muniz says, when is the essence no? No, I think you mean known. You just answered my question when you shared experience on giving into yourself. Okay, I think you got the answer you needed there. Let me know if you have another question on that, Daria. Yeah, I mean, I can respond to it a little bit though, because it brings something fun up. When is the essence known? My gosh, what a beautiful question. I think I have to speak from personal experience here and just say, and we're going to wrap up tonight with this one, because this is a deep, deep question. And I do want to try to stick to my hour-long boundaries so folks can plan around that. I have always had this odd awareness that the purpose of doing all this light work is to integrate and become whole. Whereas I was watching a lot of people around me do all this light work to like expand and leave their body and have no feelings and be free and float around, like we started out tonight's conversation talking about. I feel grateful that I've always had that, I don't know, North Star to head towards. I've always been heading towards wholeness integration, feeling complete into myself, knowing who I am in my being, in my belly, in my body, in my heart, not as a concept in my head, but just being like clunk. Like I feel it's like this clunk. The soul dropped in, all the stuff in the way, dissipate, release, clear. And then there I am left with just this silent, qualityless essence that other people experience through the filter of my personality, but I'm no longer identified with my personality, if that makes any sense. It's like the personality doesn't go anywhere. You don't one day have no personality. It's just you come to understand that your essential self has nothing to do with personality. Personality is simply the filter through which your essence is transmitted to others. So people, I've shared this a lot, people frequently describe me using words like direct, clear, strong, intense, powerful. And if they're triggered, they aggressive, angry, mean, which is usually a projection, but sometimes not because I'm human. I experience myself as like, I don't know, silent potency. Like I feel like wind being filtered through a very clear funnel. Like I feel like my body mind organism is a very like in the same way that a what do you call it, centrifuge, like if you spin atoms around in a centrifuge, and it's or like when you make this is a better metaphor, when you squeeze what is it, coal down and it becomes a diamond. I feel like that. Meaning I can feel the pressure in my low belly of consciousness coming into form and saying words through my body face machine. And that pressure is what you would call Katie Rubin. So how do we come to know ourselves as that essence? Do your healing work in a way that is about integrating and becoming whole. Don't do it to escape. Do it to come here into this heart, into the pain. And then I promise you, if you stay with the pain and let the light continue to heal you there in that pain, there is a day where you find, and back to Ray's question, everything that was always behind the pain, which was the essence of you. And then when you get to live as that essence, it's very empowering and at the same time very liberating. Because when you know yourself as your essence, there's nothing to prove. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I have me. Where am I going? What am I proving? Now the only thing left to do is create. Create as the vessel of me is inclined to create. And rest when I need to rest and connect when I need to connect. Take care of the temple in all of its facets and features. Your temple, your body, mind, heart, organism needs to connect with others. It needs love. It needs rest. It needs water. It needs entertainment. It needs sex sometimes. It needs intimacy. It needs nature. It needs God. It needs a lot of things. But all of those needs are not you. You are the essential field of light that has needs, that whose temple has needs, if that makes any sense at all. All right. Well, thank you, Daria. I'm glad that's clear. Okay, great. You guys, this has been a delight. Thank you all so much for being here. Join us next week. We'll do this every Wednesday at 5:30 Eastern, right here at Katie Rubin's Biz Stuff. And let's see, what do I have coming up? I have Star Beings class begins next Tuesday the 22nd. We're almost at capacity there, but I have room for one or two more people if you're curious about that. Here, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Just send me a quick email. And yeah, it should be there, I think. There it is. Send me an email about that. We start on Tuesday, the 22nd. That's a 7-week class where I transmit the light of the star beings for everybody in class online for 7 weeks. And we do a lot of our emotional integration work. That's what we're doing. Emotional 3-2-1 chakra work combined with like the highest frequencies of light that you can hold in a human body. Also my writing class, channeled writing class, Writing in Alignment, starts tomorrow. There's definitely room. It's a Thursday class. There's a daytime class and an evening class. You can join either one of those if you're interested in channel writing. Any kind of writing at all is welcome. Email me with questions about that. And when you're ready for your healing session or Akashic Records reading, katierubin.com. I'll throw that up here, even though it's on your screen already. You guys, it's so wonderful to get to talk with you and to share what I hear from the realms beyond. Thank you for being here, and really take care of the body, mind, organism, because you matter and the world needs you. The world needs you to be at the seat of yourself, because when you function from the seat of yourself, you're functioning from your truth and your highest alignment. So let's all do our best to get there and be that for the sake of the awakening of the collective. I love you. Bye.